Welcome back to Rebuilding New Orleans, the Dutch Plan. One of the first things the Dutch did after that disastrous and deadly storm in 1953 was to restore and rebuild this levee. This is the one that gave way and led to tragedy for that small village of Ouwerkerk. It was the first of many improvements the Dutch would make. You feel safe now?
Oh ja, absoluut.
An emphatic yes from flood survivor Jan van den Amer, and spoken with typical Dutch confidence in the government's response to the disaster. The big flood of '53 taught the Dutch they had to go way beyond just building bigger and stronger levees and pumping land dry to control flooding, but they had to use the best of technology. The challenge pushed Dutch engineering know-how to the limit. One result? The Maasland Barrier in the middle of the river from the North Sea, leading to one of the world's busiest ports. It's perhaps the most awe-inspiring project of all the Delta works. In the late 50s, the Dutch Parliament approved a series of billion-dollar dams and barriers to control the flow of water from the North Sea for the southwestern part of the nation. In typical Dutch innovation, the government turned to the private sector for some ideas on how to control and manage the water of the Rotterdam harbor. The Dutch then decided this was the best idea, the Maasland Barrier, the private Dutch design, and then public Dutch dollars to get the job done. Workers completed the project in '97. Here's how it works.
A computer system controls this barrier, and it also decides to close the barrier. When we expect a water level of 3 meters above normal sea level. That's about 10 feet above normal sea level. Then here the doors of this dock will open, and two gigantic doors, they are 210 meters in width, will float on the water, and they will go to the middle of the river. When they arrive in the middle of the river, the valves underneath will open and water will flow inside, so they will sink. The total process of closing this barrier takes 2.5 hours. The process to open the barrier also takes about 2.5 hours. Now this barrier will sink to the sill on the bottom of the river on concrete blocks we have placed on that bottom. When the storm flood is over on this side, this is the sea side, that is a river, so continuously water will flow into this, to this point. Both water levels are equal. Then water will be pumped out of the retaining walls, and they will float again, and then they can be pushed back into their docks.
The barrier protects the port of Rotterdam and much of Western Holland from tidal surges and flooding, or as the Dutch Crown Prince told Senator Mary Landrieu on touring the site.
We are protecting here 800 trillion euros of investment.
Protecting 800 trillion euros, which equals $1 quadrillion and more.
Lots of people, because I think 2/3 of the Netherlands is living in this area. Everyone is living on the coast because there is the economics, there is the trade, so just like the port of Rotterdam.
What would that mean then for the port of Rotterdam? It would shut it down, it would close, it would destroy it.
I don't know, but when it is flooded, you can't use it anymore.
The government says the barrier reduces the chances of flooding to 1 in 10,000 years.
The barrier isn't shut down yet. Under storm conditions. It is only shut for testing conditions.
It's a mighty expensive insurance policy, a point the Dutch repeatedly told the Americans that it takes will and commitment and money.
And it's important to invest in these important works. I think you agree it's better to prevent than to evacuate. To keep our country safe against flooding, it's not enough to build these barriers. You also have to maintain and to check them. And that's why we check them every 5 years for their main purpose, to keep our feet dry. And let's keep in mind, a worldwide disaster often goes before large expenditure.
There are a lot of similarities and a lot of differences between the Dutch and the Americans. Is one of the differences, as you see, having to do with money and with will and with commitment?
That is the decision of the elected officials to what they appropriate their funds. And we have a certain policy in this country that we have quite high taxes, but for that we decide to defend our country country against flooding. But it's, once again, that is the decision to the elected officials who are sitting next to me. You can ask them the questions if you want.
Well, I would just add, if I could, though, on that point, that while the Crown Prince said, you know, high taxes, it's relative. I mean, we've been talking about the cost. It may be as much as a prescription to a newspaper, given the figures that we have seen. And so, you know, that's what we're doing right now, is comparing the cost to the benefits.
The sight of the storm surge barrier led St. Bernard President Junior Rodriguez to say the Dutch do a whole lot more than talking.
Well, the one that impresses me the most is the dedication of these people. You know, they're dedicated, they know what they're doing, and they're planning for the future. They're not putting anything off. They're planning for the worst case scenario. Look at us, we just want to put it back the way it was.
The Dutch dilemma of having so much land below sea level makes the Dutch plan and choices seem simple. The Dutch know they paid a big price 53 years ago. They and Jan van den Emmer learned it's about survival.
Do you think the government has done enough to protect the Netherlands?
Ja, ik denk het wel.
I think for the moment the government did enough, and in the future the government, but I know, have to do more, because the water level in the whole world is rising.